everyone, it's Sarah from Sarah Girl Nutrition here, and this week we're talking about what a healthy period looks like. So have you ever wondered what a healthy period actually looks like? Maybe you've discussed it with your friends, and maybe you have the same symptoms, but unsure actually if that is healthy, if that's right, and unsure how to decode what your symptoms mean. So our period can be considered like our monthly report card, giving us clues into what our overall health is like. So what I want to do this week is to clarify what a healthy period looks like, what your period is trying to tell you, and how to work on balancing your hormones if your grade is below par. So first, what is a healthy period? Well, a period is termed a period because it occurs periodically throughout each month, but it isn't just the days you're bleeding, so okay, your period. It is also what is happening throughout the whole of your cycle that gives us clues into your health status. So first, let's consider the length of each menstrual cycle. So on average, this is around 28 days, but a healthy menstrual cycle can be anywhere between 21 and 35 days, and actually up to 45 days as a teenager. During the first half of your cycle, estrogen increases, which can contribute to a boost in libido and mood, so you might feel you are more confident, a little bit more motivated, and generally happier during these days. Estrogen stimulates fertile mucus, which looks similar and feels very similar to a raw egg white, and its production peaks as estrogen does, which is why you might notice it heavily just before ovulation. So actually experiencing that sort of raw egg white mucus, that is a sign of ovulation has happened, which is a really good thing. Ovulation typically occurs at day 14, but it might fluctuate depending based on your cycle length. So actually pay attention to those fertile mucus if you do get that. But you also might notice a small twinge or mild pain just below your hip bone on either side. Ovulation occurs when the egg is released, so it like pops out, and it is that popping that causes the like small twinge or mild pain, and that's completely normal. It shouldn't be anything too intense, but you might notice something, as I say, low down below your hip bone. After ovulation happens, you come into the luteal phase, and this is where progesterone takes over. And progesterone is like the yin to estrogen's yang. So whilst estrogen's job was to build up the uterine lining, progesterone works to thin the lining, which can help create a lighter period. Progesterone has a calming effect. It can benefit sleep, so actually you might notice you are generally calmer, respond better to stress, and sleep better during the second half of your cycle. If everything has gone right up until this point, then your uterine lining should be well formed, not too inflamed, and easy to shed. If you've had a sufficient production of progesterone, then actually your period should arrive smoothly with only a small amount of period pain, no intense cramps or spotting, and definitely no PMS. So it is normal to have a little bit, you might notice, as I say, like a gentle pain or a little bit of discomfort, but you should not get any intense cramping at all. So during your period, the fluid that should be released should be mostly liquid with no large blood clots, and a large blood clot is considered something bigger than a 5p piece. The colour should be a shade of red. It can start out lighter and brighter, so quite like a cherry red, before actually becoming a little bit darker as your period draws to a close. Your menstrual flow should last between 3 and 5 days, as well as a couple of extra days with light spotting afterwards. You should lose about 3 tablespoons worth of blood during a period, which if you're using a menstrual cup, then actually you maybe will be able to estimate that, and that's 3 tablespoons throughout the whole of your period, not just one day. If you're using things like tampons and pads, it can be a lot harder to estimate, but ideally we shouldn't be changing those more than every 2 hours during the day, and as our flow slows down during the night, then actually we shouldn't need to change anything whilst you sleep. So if that isn't you, let's now go through what your period is trying to tell you. So no period or irregular period. So what might be happening there? Well, actually, if you've had a really regular period and then suddenly your period doesn't come and you're sexually active, it is not to be overlooked to check whether you're pregnant or not. And again, it's not to be overlooked if you're over the age of 40 and actually notice your periods start becoming really irregular. Consider actually, are you perimenopause? Has that started for you? The timing of menopause is generally genetically programmed. So ask your mum, your aunt, your older sisters what age they went through the menopause, and actually that is likely to be a similar age for you. So if you are suspecting that actually your periods become more irregular and you're at about the right age, that your other family members went through the menopause, then you can get your FSH levels tested to confirm that via the GP. Stress is another big reason for either irregular periods or periods stopping altogether. And the reason that is because when we are stressed, actually we have hormones and signals flooding the body that is just telling the brain that it's not safe to reproduce right now. The body is not in a fit state to reproduce. And that can be any type of stressor, so emotional, psychological, physical stress, so including things like trauma, illness, surgery, they all contribute to stress. Undereating is another factor, but this is actually another form of stress which triggers the brain to stop reproduction. So the body views it as just not having enough resources right now to make a baby, so it takes hold of the situation and just shuts down the menstrual cycle. A low carbohydrate diet can do a similar thing to undereating because it can trigger the starvation response in the brain, which again can stop your period. Consuming enough carbohydrates is really important for luteinizing hormones. So if you're not eating enough carbohydrates, this can disrupt the production of luteinizing hormone and shut down ovulation. And finally, there are other medical conditions. So things like thyroid conditions, celiac disease, PCOS can all contribute to either stopping your periods or irregular periods. So those are something that should be ruled out by the medical profession if actually none of the above apply. Another thing you might be suffering with is heavy periods. So a heavy period is classified as a period lasting longer than 7 days, or using 16 or more fully soaked regular tampons during your period. And heavy bleeding could be due to uterine polyps, fibroids, PCOS, can happen in perimenopause. The copper IUD can also contribute, as well as thyroid conditions and endometriosis as well. Estrogen excess is a big contributing factor and can drive actually many of the conditions I just went through. So the best way to understand if you have estrogen excess and its ratio to progesterone, which is really, really important, is to get your levels tested via the Dutch test, which is a dried urine comprehensive hormone test. Symptoms of elevated estrogen can be things like heavy periods, PMS, breast tenderness, and fibroids. So they can start giving you clues that actually, is it estrogen excess? Estrogen excess can occur for 3 reasons. So firstly, because we produce too much in our body. Secondly, we can't clear it down from the body, so our detoxification processes and how we metabolize estrogen in the body isn't up to par. And the third reason is because actually we can get it from our environment, so through something called endocrine disrupting chemicals. And these mimic estrogen in the body. They're found in things like pesticides, plastic, beauty and cleaning products, and they just add to our overall estrogen load. Something else is considered irregular is shorter or longer cycles. So check if you're within that 21 day to 35 day menstrual cycle, which is considered normal. If you have a longer or shorter cycle, then technically they're considered irregular periods. So what I just went through for around irregular periods, that is, those are reasons why that might be occurring. Painful periods is unfortunately something that's incredibly common. A small amount of period pain is normal. So it's normal in the first couple of days to feel like something's a little bit off, maybe a little bit discomfort. But it should be light enough that it shouldn't affect your day-to-day activities. You might just feel a little bit uncomfortable. It is also possible, some women, and it's also possible not to feel any sort of pain or discomfort. I want to put that out there, that it is absolutely possible. More intense pain or cramping is something that should definitely be explored because that is not part of a healthy period. So period pain is caused by something called prostaglandins, which are inflammatory molecules, and they can be a reason why you also experience diarrhea on the first day of your period. Higher levels of estrogen and lower levels of progesterone can increase prostaglandin production, which can then cause more intense period pain. So any period pain that feels like a stabbing pain, burning or throbbing, and that lasts for many, many days, this should definitely be investigated by your GP because this could be caused by an underlying condition such as endometriosis, or you have an active infection. PMS, so this is probably the most common one, and I've never met a woman, unfortunately, that doesn't suffer with some sort of PMS symptoms. And whilst it's incredibly common, it is not normal to experience things like headaches, bloating, irritability, acne, breast tenderness, food cravings, fluid retention, and any other symptoms that you associate with PMS. PMS can be caused by 5 factors, really. It can be caused by higher estrogen levels, lower progesterone levels, and the ratio between them, high histamine levels or an intolerance to histamine, inflammation and stress. So those are the 5 things that if you do have PMS, then actually you want to start addressing those and seeing which apply. And now I'm going to come on to what we can do to start balancing our periods, and we will be going through some of those. So the best first step to balancing your periods is to understand what is actually happening during your cycle. So tracking your cycle and any symptoms you may experience is a really good place to start. Also getting your hormone levels tested via the Dutch test if you can, to really understand what your levels are and how they convert between each other can help to really give targeted support and often get quicker and better results. However, there's lots of sort of general diet and lifestyle changes that can be put in place to support hormonal harmony. First thing is to reduce inflammatory foods. So inflammation can throw off how the body talks and communicates with each other, which is a big problem for your hormones because they work much like an orchestra does, so cueing off from one another. So inflammation can block those signals and how they communicate. So there's many things that contribute to inflammation. It is a big topic. So things like having an unhealthy gut microbiome, so your gut bacteria, environmental toxins, stress, a lack of movement, but actually inflammatory foods as well, and addressing those can often be a good place to start. So the top 3 inflammatory foods that everybody should look at reducing or avoiding are sugar, alcohol, and refined vegetable oil. And that is because simply they are all inflammatory no matter who you are. The other 2 that are also quite inflammatory are gluten and dairy, but not everybody necessarily has quite the severity of reaction to them. Both the quality and quantity of how much is ingested can affect the reaction in the body. What I generally suggest, if your hormones are out of whack, or any of the things we've just been through in this video around sort of heavy periods, painful periods, PMS type symptoms, I generally suggest a trial period, elimination period, for a minimum of 4 weeks, so both gluten and dairy, to see actually if you notice any difference in symptoms. And often you might not always notice until you start reintroducing the foods actually how much different eliminating these foods made. And you'll understand that actually do you need to avoid these completely and they really, really support a healthy period for you? Or do you actually have a little bit more play and flex and actually just consuming them good quality, gluten, dairy, or reducing your quantity, actually that also can contribute to a healthy period for you, but it's going to be personalised to you. So the flip side of reducing inflammatory foods is to up anti-inflammatory foods and hormone-supported foods. So phytoestrogens are being one. So phytoestrogens are plant-based chemicals. They are plant-based estrogens, if you like, and they're found in foods such as soy, flax seeds, beans and legumes. And how they work is they exert a weak estrogen-like effect on the body, which can be really helpful if your overall estrogen load is too high. And it might sound a little bit counterproductive or counterintuitive that actually we're adding more estrogen-like compounds if your estrogen levels are high. But actually what they do is they come along and they block, and they sit in the estrogen receptors, so they block the action of either our own estrogen or external estrogen found in those endocrine disrupting chemicals, so things like pesticides, plastics. So actually they can reduce your overall estrogen, how much estrogen is working within the cell. If you are going to consume soy as a phytoestrogen source, make sure it's organic and unprocessed. Magnesium is a miracle mineral for periods and hormonal health. So it's really wonderful and calming. So it can help with things like period pain, cramps, PMS, PCOS, and many other things. It really helps to calm and soothe the nervous system. It can help support sleep, promotes a healthy metabolism of estrogen, and is also anti-inflammatory in nature. Unfortunately, when we are stressed, what happens is the body actually dumps magnesium out the body, and it might sound a little bit silly that we need that when we're stressed because magnesium is important for calming and soothing the nervous system. But actually, when we're getting signals that we are in a fight or flight reaction, then what happens is the body dumps magnesium because actually it means then the nervous system is more alert and active to respond to that stressor. So actually, it has a very good reason for doing this, but unfortunately it doesn't necessarily support us. Our diets are generally quite depleted in magnesium, even if we consume very magnesium-rich foods, so things like dark leafy greens, pumpkin seeds, tofu mackerel, dark chocolate. Soil content can actually be quite low in magnesium. So actually try upping your dietary intake if it's poor right now. But actually things like Epsom salt baths, which are really rich in magnesium, or adding in a magnesium supplement or like a magnesium oil, which is used topically, can be really great ways to up your magnesium. Zinc is another really, really good mineral for period health. So zinc deficiency has been implicated in things like irregular periods, increased facial hair, PCOS, PMS, and period pain as well. So zinc is anti-inflammatory and it works very similarly to magnesium to regulate our nervous system and regulating the stress response. It also helps to promote healthy ovulation, progesterone levels, and it's required for the production, transportation, and action of all of our hormones in our body. So really, really important for general period health. So things like oysters, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, shellfish and nuts are all really, really good dietary sources to get in. The next thing we can do to help support a healthy period is decrease our stress. So our stress levels, unfortunately, in 21st century living are chronic. And what can happen is it can curtail ovulation and reduce the production of estrogen and progesterone. And that is because the body actually, so our steroid hormones, our fat-soluble hormones, so cortisol, estrogen, progesterone, are all made from the same raw materials. And the body prioritizes the production of cortisol over estrogen and progesterone, which is why actually high stress levels can reduce the production of those. those. So reducing your stress levels is probably one of the best ways to improve your hormonal function, and I appreciate it is easier said than done. However, prioritising rest, relaxation and self-care on a daily basis is a really good place to start. And it can be something really small, so 5 minutes of deep breathing, journaling, or just being more present in everyday tasks such as brushing your teeth or washing the dishes. Or it can be a bigger gesture, so maybe a really calm, relaxing morning and or evening routine, or dedicating to, I don't know, reading a book and having a bath before bed each day. Whatever you can manage, prioritising reducing your stress every day is going to be one of the best things you can do to improve your hormonal health. Sleep is the next one. It kind of comes in hand with stress levels. So actually, maybe prioritising your sleep is the way that actually you reduce your stress levels. And I'm sure it comes as no surprise that stress is good for hormonal health because, let's face it, sleep is good for everything. Sleep really works to regulate that stress response, as well as it also regulates the release of luteinizing hormone, estrogen and progesterone. So try to aim for about 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night, but more if you're going through a period of increased stress or ill health. The best way to work out actually how much sleep you need is to, on a day where you've got nothing to get up for, so maybe a weekend day, is to not set the alarm and see what time you wake up naturally, and repeat this over a few days to get a better idea of what your own personal sleep requirement is. And the last thing we can do to really help improve our hormonal health and our period health is movement. So getting in regular exercise or movement can really help to improve hormonal health by reducing cortisol, improving blood circulation to our pelvic organs, and also as well as reducing chronic inflammation. Consistency and repetition is important here. So my most important thing is to pick something that you enjoy and you can keep on doing.